Next slide, please. The Common App is a tool that was created in 2023 by 3 Bay Area funders, Flash Hacker Foundation, Rainin Foundation, and Zellerbach Foundation. And they did this to streamline the application process for those who are looking for project funding and or general operating funding. This spring, InterMusic SF joined these grant makers along with Gerbode Foundation and Theater Bay Area in implementing this tool in each one of our funding applications. So if you'd like to learn more about the Common App, please consider attending a second workshop in our professional development workshop series on April 4th called How to Write a Strong Grant Proposal Using the Common App. That will have members of all of these funders presenting alongside InterMusic SF. If you're eligible and interested in applying for one of those other funding opportunities, you should 100% consider using the Common App first and then taking your responses to populate each other application. If you've already used the Common App for another grant, you can take those narratives and populate the musical grant program application. You're basically 90% there. Just to be clear, you cannot submit the common application in place of the MGP application. You must fill out an MGP specific application to be considered for this particular award, and that actually applies to all of the foundations. So you have to go into their individual platforms and actually populate, but you can use this one tool for all of the questions. Okay. The grant activity period. This is the grant activity period for 2024 is June 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2025. The activity period is a time frame that outlines when you will have access to funds and the period of time which you have to spend the awarded funds on project aligned activities. In other words, you cannot apply for a grant for a project that is scheduled to have activity before June 1st, 2024 or after December 31st, 2025. So the activity has to be in this period. Please note that this is a slight change from past cycles. It's a slightly smaller period of time, roughly 18 months versus a possible 24 months. However, this is to facilitate eligibility for applicants to apply to the MGP every other year versus missing the January 31st deadline of submitting a final report and then not being eligible for that February's open application cycle. So we just figured if everyone gets it done in 18 months and everybody has the same deadline, then everyone has the same eligibility every other year. And it's a little bit more transparent. Okay. Final grant report. Oh, actually, along the same lines, the final grant report is due on January 31st, 1 month following the grant period. The final grant report is like a project proposal. It's a report that has a form component, work samples, and budget info. We ask narrative questions about your awarded project. You kind of want to know, like, how did you propose the project and what actually happened? What funds did you project the project requiring? How much did you actually raise? How much did you actually spend? And we want to just understand, these expense kind of details. So to put the 2 points together, if you apply and are awarded for a grant during the 2024 cycle, you will complete your project and all activities before December 31st, 2025. Submit the grant report by January 31, 2026, and be eligible to apply for the MGP funding cycle in 2026. Okay. Applicant types. So these are just some of the terms that you're going to see basically all the way through the application. An artistic entity is what we are referring to as a solo artist project, an ensemble project, a concert presenter organization, or one person who operates as a concert presenter, and an arts and culture organization. The single entity applicant is only one of these artistic entities. The collaboration applicant is two artistic entities consisting of a lead applicant and a project partner. Both artistic entities and the project partner must have a main contact who is the individual responsible for the grant activities. The main contact for the lead applicant is the application preparer, and they submit the elements. They actually go through the process of submitting the application. The main contact for the project partner is considered an applicant that is active, an active applicant, and that entity must also meet all eligibility requirements. Since the project partner is not filling out and submitting the application, we have a separate form, the project partner eligibility form, that will help us determine eligibility. This is a slight change to the application process for MGP this year. Project partners of collaborative projects are required to fill out this form for the application to be considered complete. It's a form of consent. They know they're involved in this proposal. They are acknowledging and attesting to the facts surrounding their eligibility, like residency. So this is kind of an active thing that your project partner has to do to complete a collaboration. Here's an example. Caesar T. Dog is the main contact for Caesar Dog Productions. He would like to write for the Wolf Tones. The Wolf Tones have a main contact, Rhea T. Canine. In this case, Caesar is going to prepare the application for the project involving Caesar Dog Productions and list Rhea T. Canine of the Wolf Tones as the project partner. Caesar will prepare and submit the application. Rhea will fill out the project partner eligibility form as the main contact for the Wolf Tones. Both the application and the eligibility form are submitted by both parties. And once that's done, they have a complete application. So I hope that's clear. Okay, more about applicant types. These are the types of entities that are eligible to apply for the MGP. Small ensembles, including solo projects, groups of 1 to 25, guest artists and small ensemble collaborations, composer and small ensemble collaborations, concert and festival presenters, arts and culture organizations. So this is describing the people and the entities that are eligible. Small ensembles, presenters, and organizations can apply as single entity applicants. Yes, artists and composers must apply as collaborations, but they can serve the role as either a lead or a project partner. So there are lots of different combinations here. In the case of Caesar and the Wolf Tones can apply as a single entity. Caesar T. Dog cannot as a composer. He needs the Wolf Tones to collaborate with to make small ensemble music. He could be the lead, as we saw, or the Wolf Tones could say, we want to commission Caesar T. Dog as our proposal, and they are then the lead applicant. But they both need to be eligible and fulfill all of the requirements as we list them. And they also can't appear on any other applications in those contexts. If there's a member of the Wolf Tones who is also a member of another group, they can be included. So it's really, if you have questions about personnel, it's really best to reach out so that we can see the specific situation. Another thing that kind of comes up a lot is if Caesar T-Dog had his own ensemble that he was writing for, he would list himself as the lead applicant and the composer, and the group, his ensemble, as the partner, project partner. He could serve as the main contact for both in that case.
Was that single or collaborative?
That would be a collaboration. Yeah.
Assuming single is much more acceptable.
It is.
That's why we're using collaborative.
But it's only these entities. If you are applying as a presenter, your focus for the project should be on presenting music for the small ensemble. If you are an arts and culture organization, your focus and/or mission should be on small ensemble music. Okay. Geographic and other requirements. You must be 18 years of age, a legal resident, U.S. citizen, and also reside and present the project in one of these 9 Bay Area counties. Your project should include 51% participants, meaning players, project partners, and their players, etc., that reside in these counties. Projects involving a lot of out-of-town artists should show how the project will be beneficial to the local community, demonstrate other activities in the Bay Area, historical and or future, and highlight local partners like venues and other arts organizations that are part of the project. If you have questions about residence and or project presentation location, please email mgp at intermusicsf.org. A few exclusions to be aware of. If you were awarded by the MGP last year, you're not eligible this year. If you have ever been awarded but have not submitted a final report, you are also not eligible to apply. And like I mentioned, you can only be active on one application per year. So either as a lead or as a partner or as a single. Okay, eligible project types. These include live performances and concerts, commissions of new work, professional studio recordings, and presentation of short duration festivals. I'm going to say this now. This includes eligible expenses for direct program costs for these types of projects. And we will expand on that in the budget section, and what those expenses can include. Project requirements: all projects must include and involve at least one small ensemble. All collaborations must include a lead applicant and a project partner, and all applicants must list a main contact. Things we do not fund: entire seasons of concerts, events and activities closed to the general public. This includes educational outreach at schools, general operating expenses, fundraising activities, purchasing of equipment. There's a little caveat here. You can purchase equipment to produce your project so long as that is not the sole purpose of the project. For example, if your project is to purchase a piano and you're also having a small concert surrounding that, if the purchase of the piano far outweighs the expenses, you'll have to show that another funder is purchasing your piano. And the MGP awards can be used to produce the concert. If you have questions about purchasing equipment or expenses that are eligible, again, reach out. This is pretty clear. on those lines. And there's not a lot of, our mission doesn't fall too far outside of that. Also, debt rejection. We do not from that. Okay. Let's go to the panel review. An independent panel of 4 Bay Area-based artists of diverse cultural backgrounds and areas of musical expertise will review the applications. Their identities will remain anonymous. Many of us, the Bay Area is small in reality, and so we keep the panelists anonymous in this case. The decisions of the panel are final. And I'm going to share with you some of the criteria that they will use to evaluate project proposals. All this being said, the FAQ page on the MGP website offers a ton of answers about nuanced situations, the kind of things that I'm kind of unpacking right now. There's so much more there. If you feel like you have a nuanced situation, please review that info. And again, if you just have any questions, always feel free to reach out to one of our staff. And without further delay, let's dive into the narrative. We're going to switch gears and look at the sample application posted to the MGP website. Today, I'll be working from the collaboration application since those are more complex than the single applicant. Here in the room, we have both, so you can just, it's not that different, but there are just some additions you would want to skip ahead if you're a single applicant and following along. We recommend that you draft your answers in a word processor so that you can keep track of word counts. The word count limits that we are employing on this application match the Common App. So even if they're slightly different, you're going to come up with a narrative that is roughly the same size. You're not going to have to like get rid of, 3 sentences, which is like the worst. None of the questions, not all of the questions in the MGP application directly correlate to questions in the Common App, but most of them do. We aimed for an 80% overlap. They're not worded the same, but the numbers and how they are referenced in the Common App are noted here. So it will say reference Common App for A, and then you go to the Common App and you'll see the same question and maybe worded a tiny bit different, but the same word counts. Okay. I think we can keep going through here. So this is where you would say, sorry, can you scroll? Sorry. This is where you would say single entity or collaboration. And that's where it would kind of point you in the right direction on jot form. And then if you scroll here, we start talking about the lead applicant application. So in this case, we're going back to Caesar T. Dog. He's the composer. So that's what we would choose there. There are some just general questions. The lead applicant artistic entity, when it talks about the name or the content, the social media, this is all having to do with the group information. When it comes to main contact, this is where we talk about the individual who is taking responsibility for the application and the funds if awarded. So these are lead applicant made contact information. You'll answer the yes or no questions. This will help us determine eligibility. And then we'll go for the collaboration application. It goes next into describing your project partner and their entity. So in this case, the Wolf Tones are a small ensemble, listing the Wolf Tones entity name, and then the individual under the main contact information. And then To the best of the knowledge of the lead applicant, you would answer these questions about eligibility. They're going to get their own form. If they're not actually living, if they moved and you don't know, or something happened, or there's some part of this eligibility that they don't meet, we will find out through their participation in the eligibility form. So don't be like so stressed out if you don't know this, or don't let it hold you up. Just fill into the best of your knowledge. Okay, a note regarding the Common App through this next section, which is where we're starting the narrative. Due to the nature of the MGP, we integrated responses that have to do with organizations. So if you're looking at the Common App and you're like, but only individuals, just know that in most cases, there's more than one person in the entity. And so we just had to make a decision, and we went with integrating with that portion. If you have the word counts are very similar on the Common App. And so I think you wouldn't see that big of a difference between the two sections. But just so you're not confused, that's why that's there. The mission and artist statement, this is where you would share the core motivational elements that drive your musical activities. Why do you do what you do? What do you value? What is your vision of how your contributions address the needs of our local communities? What is it filling? How is it valuable? And what are your aims? And where do you sit, even historically? Artist history. This is where you have an opportunity to share a compelling history of significant musical activity. This is more of a narrative, and where a panelist will look to gather whether or not your area of expertise aligns with the project that you're proposing. What do you have experience in doing? What are you proposing you can do? It doesn't mean that you have to stay within your expertise, but if it is outside of your expertise, this is where you would want to show that you have a capacity to complete a successful project. The bio could either be a narrative or a submitted CV. So if you already have a CV, then you can just submit that. You know, we're trying to actually streamline and not make more work. So just do what makes sense for you with the materials that you already have and that you use often. Description of community served. Please include information on initiatives you and/or your ensemble or collaborators have implemented that demonstrates intentional effort to serve historically underserved, underrepresented, underprivileged, and/or disenfranchised communities. This is where you can really talk about community engagement. Description of recent or upcoming changes or challenges. This is a question that was on the Common App, and we thought it was really a nice thing to add. It would give applicants an opportunity to talk about changes in leadership or members of their group, personnel, a loss of space, particularly, if they've lost rehearsal space, or if a venue that they used to present at a lot is changed leadership there as well, and now they're kind of out of a place to play, or a total shift from artistic roles from what they've done historically, as a group, from one role to another. They've identified some other area that they are expanding. Okay, the project overview. We understand that there are gender-bending, hard to describe kinds of music in the Bay, which is why we all love it so much. As concisely as possible, we're looking to see how you would describe. You can make up your own word. It could be an onomatopoeia, but how would you describe the music that you make? And that would be the focus for your project. The title, please be on the same page as your project partner. We're going to ask them as well, like, what is the name of your project? So it would be Really great if we could put those two things together.
Look good in front of the panel.
Yeah. Put your story straight.
Okay, if you could provide names and locations of all venues and or workspaces secured for either public engagements, rehearsals, collaboration spaces, recordings, this would be the place where we're looking for information on how you're interacting with other artistic entities in the Bay Area and how you are participating in the music ecosystem. So there are lots of different, kind of roles that often are not the headline. If they're not taking center stage, they're not the performer, but they're supporting the musical activity. So we want to know who those folks are that you are engaging with. This could be someone who runs your practice space, or it could be a concert presenter. So that's kind of where that is. The project narrative. So in general, your project narrative is where you should outline a feasible, realistic project that is in line with the purpose and mission of the musical grant program. Is it Bay Area based? Does it include the creation, performance, and celebration of small ensemble music? Does it positively impact the musical community? Does it positively impact the community at large? For this specific reason, panelists will be looking for a clear, or this part, that response, they're going to look for a clear expression of the purpose of the project, details of the activities. Are your plans within the scope of funding that you've outlined in your budget? Is it within the time frame that you have in mind and within your capacity? So is it manageable for what you have proposed and what you've done in the past? Is this project aligned with your mission as stated? Okay. And then this question is particularly for collaborations. Please describe why you've chosen to collaborate with the partner that you've chosen. Why is it important that you are collaborating now? What does this bring to the musical community that you're working together? Okay, the project timeline. Here you'll provide a detailed project timeline of activities. This could be a list of dates with brief activity titles. Please be detailed. The more information you give and understanding of the different baby steps, the more it's, the panelist who's reading your proposal can kind of get a better sense of what you are expecting and how you're planning to get from point A to completion. Publicity and promotion. This is your publicity and promotion plan. It's very similar to your production timeline. Details are really great. Identify if there's an intended audience for the project. If you've identified communities that you are looking to serve with your project, are you outlining a way to reach them? Are you planning to hire a publicist? Does your venue advertise? All of this information is really important. We want to know if your outreach is designed to reach intended communities. And you can include any historical background that demonstrates that you successfully led publicity campaigns in the past. You can add statistics here that kind of support that, like audience sizes, campaign, like how many times you did outreach during a campaign, and how it affected who was able to experience the music that you created. Okay. Now on to the easy part, the budget. The budget is a full scope of your project, which means that if the MGP you're looking for the MGP to maybe fund a small piece of a larger project, your project budget is going to include all of those things and all of the funders who are backing the project. Now, I say this with a bit of caution. If you're not used to writing budgets, don't be overwhelmed by this idea. But it is helpful for us to see if you have other people in your court, you have other supporters, you've got things lined up, and this is a large, it's a big deal. It's a big precedent, and we would help support that effort. So it should include all of those pieces. With that said, you're going to have eligible and ineligible expenses on your budget. It is inevitable that this will happen. We will go through what the MGP is intended to fund so that you know if you're requesting enough eligible expenses for the MGP and showing that other funders will fund the ineligible expenses. Okay, let's move to the budget. I do think this is my favorite part.
It's just like,
I think it's cool. Okay, I know that I had a few things that I wanted to mention, so if I back up, sorry if I have to backtrack. Okay, so the applicant name, this is going to be the main contact information. This should be pretty straightforward. The project title, great. Now, the top portion of the budget tool, which by the way, we have changed this format. This is the Common App budget tool. I do have to say that the IMSF team was very much a part of making some updates for this year's edition. So hopefully it's clear, but this is also an ongoing kind of project that's, the Common App is still kind of advancing, so give your feedback. This is the kind of budget that you will use for most grant applications. You can almost always create your own budget without a template. We're just providing this template as a starting point. You should be able to take this project template if it's complete and apply for all project funding for any other opportunity. In this particular budget, we have 3 areas of income on the top portion. They include contributed revenue, earned income, and in-kind donations. So the contributed revenue is blocked out into individual donations. And if we follow that line, you'll see that column E has a total amount of, for 3 kinds of income. One of them is secured, pending. There's secured, pending, and what's the other one? And pledged. So here, or received. There we go, received. So if you've already received funding, that's the other kind. So here we'll want to see whatever is in column E broken out in column H. So note historical contribution levels or anticipated campaigns. So historical contribution levels. If you have a donor, in this case, Caesar T. Dog is planning an online campaign via email and social media. It's projected, he's projecting here that he'll raise $3,000. Can you move that over?
Yeah.
$3,000 in small donations anticipated for September 2024. And it's listed here that the projection is based on a historical campaign that he already ran. So if you've already ran a crowdfunding campaign, you know what your donor base is capable of. That's where you're going to get that number. You know that you're roughly going to get like, I don't know, 25 donors and you'll raise $3,000. And that's how you can kind of project what you would get for a particular type of campaign. Here, it looks like he has a donor that gives to him every year at the $5,000 level in year-end giving right before the tax year closes for the calendar year in December. He actually has 2 of those. So those are pledges. Those could be their promises, their understandings. I would not add a pledge unless you have at least a verbal confirmation. But if you do, and you say to your donor, like, hey, you always give in December. It's so great. And it makes my life amazing. And I have this awesome project coming and I want to tell you about it. And then you tell them about it and you say, can I please count on you this December? Because it'd be so great to tell other funders and I could use your gift to leverage. Then I would, and they say yes. Then you would add it here as a pledge. For foundations and government funding, you would include the current application amounts that would be pending. And you would also say if they're secured and when you plan to receive them. So in this case, the Barker Family Foundation is going to give Caesar $5,000 or did in February. So that's received. Zellerbach is pending. So maybe there's an application that's been submitted for $5,000. And if they get it, they'll know in June 2024. SFAC, $10,000. They have already gotten it several years in a row and it's secured. Maybe they got the grant letter, but they won't receive the funds until September 2024. So that's how these are reading. That's the detail. That would be really great. 2 options here. You could list the musical grant program ask award as pending in this row, or you could add it like I have here, musical grant program 2024. And then I have the ask amount. The important thing is that whatever you're budgeting to ask for this grant cycle, that you're building that into your balanced budget. So we can see how much you're pending and how that would reflect here. For commissions, in this case, can you scroll back over? Thank you. This is in the template under earned income. This would be if a composer is being paid by an outside entity and is earning income and it was not donated. So this is an exchange of funds in which the composer is delivering a service called being commissioned. And that's where you would add that line. You would not add that as what you're expecting from the MGP here. It is not earned income. MGP would have to be under donated, contributed income. In this case, admission and ticket sales, $25 estimated. Got that number, broke it out in the notes, $25, 100 attendees. And then in other, I said, he's hosting a workshop at a college and going to earn $3,000. So putting it towards that somehow, maybe they're workshopping this particular project, it's earning $3,000 by being workshopped at the college. And then you have in-kind donations. In-kind donations are very slippery slope. I would err on the side of less. There's lots of things that you can say are in kind, but I would be very careful here. In this case, I put actual donated goods, donated wine for the performance. You want to put fair market value into these projections. I'm not going to ever spend $5,000. No one's going to spend $5,000 for estimated 100 people event online. They're going to spend roughly $500. That's a reasonable amount or fair market value. You can always spend more or spend less, but you want to aim for just middle of the road what would an organization budget size of yours really be looking to spend and realistically spend with a balanced budget that isn't kind of lopsided? That's how you find those numbers. Here I place the PR consulting at $2,000 because that's fair market value for a project of this size, a budget of $43,500, $2,000 of donated PR time. So that's kind of where that's how I would suggest finding in-kind fair market value rates. If you have questions about that, I'm happy to unpack that even further if necessary, but maybe for larger grants, that might be something that you're looking to tie together and just like really, really button up. And that's a tricky section of the budget. Okay, let's go to expenses. So in expenses, you could think of these as the actual things that you're buying to produce the project, and the people and the services that you're hiring. That's the two sections of the expenses that we're seeing right here. Under this is also indirects. We will get into indirects. The first line, facilities, says note if there, the details in column H. Here we have 20% of monthly rent space for 9 months. I'm putting it here because this is a direct cost of their project. Otherwise, they wouldn't be using it. If you're going to be using it no matter what, and you're not renting it just for this particular, like a series of concerts or something, then it would be an indirect cost with a percentage. And I hope we'll get to that in a moment. If you're going to be paying for it, whether or not you're doing this project, it's an indirect. If it's something that you're purchasing and you absolutely need for that project, then it's a direct cost. And the MGP funds direct costs. Also indirects, but only 10%, and we'll get there. So this is broken out into $360 for the space. The rental of the performance venue is listed as $2,000. The rental of the performance venue for performance is $2,000. So altogether, we have $4,360 for facilities for direct project costs. The next line is production materials and equipment. This would cover piano rentals, sheet music, printing, gels for lights, anything that you need for the actual project to be produced. This is where the caveat is, right? Yes. This is the caveat about instruments. If you are looking to purchase a washboard because you want to do a particular piece, that isn't going to tip your budget out of balance or out of whack kind of proportionally. And if it does, it needs to be shown up above who is paying for that. Is Zellerbach paying for that? Is your private donations paying for that? Where along the line do you have donors that say you have unrestricted funding, and you can pay for things like this? Or they restricted it and you had a campaign and now you can buy this instrument. If it doesn't say that, we do not cover the purchase of instruments. It's not an eligible expense. Whew. Gosh. Okay. We're almost there.
You got this. Let's see if you're ever finish this.
She's got some really good music. Okay, so under administration fees, this is another place where I would just be very careful. These are administration fees that are direct costs of the project. Only those expenses here. Payment processing for the sale of tickets for this particular project. Fiscal sponsorship fees would only apply in the percentage of the project funding that was required, and if that was required for sponsorship. So what I would say here is we don't require fiscal sponsorship. So you don't have to have fiscal sponsorship to apply. If other funding is only possible to make the entire project go and you needed fiscal sponsorship, a portion of your activities that fall under this project versus all of your activities total, that percentage of fiscal sponsorship would be covered. So how much of this project makes up your artistic entities for the entire year, and the percentage of that would be the same percentage of fiscal sponsorship fees for funding for this project would be something that you could say is a direct project cost. Woo! It's a tricky one, I know, because it's almost like an indirect. Okay. This is easier. Promotional materials, printing of postcards, printing of posters, advertisements. So digital advertisements, I know that I said earlier, like materials. Digital would go here also, digital advertisements. Not the designing. The designing is the personnel. That goes in a different area, but the actual purchase of the advertising space, that would go here in promotional materials. Hospitality, meals for day of performances are eligible. However, expenses for out-of-town collaborations should be funded by other identified funders, and you would note that in the section above, like we were talking about earlier, in the eligibility, like what we fund and what we don't fund. So we fund Bay Area musicians and we fund Bay Area projects. So if you have out-of-town folks, more than 50, around 50%, like you're not sure, their travel costs, if they're on this budget, should be identified as who, so that we know who is actually covering that cost. Okay. Compensation. Okay, now here are personnel expenses. Artistic personnel, these are your artist fees, fees for rehearsals, break it all out, how many people, what are the fees per person, and what does it cover? Commissioning fees. If you have a blanket, just this person is a part of the project and their contract is $4,000, you can write that in here. Some people do just like a large contract without individual services, all parsed out. So it depends on how your structure is, but be detailed here. Personnel for producing the project. This includes anybody who's there running tech, or is your recording engineer, or is directly involved in the production of the presentation and production of the project. On the next line, there's marketing and communications, which includes graphic designer, post-production services like recording engineers and videographers. If the videographer is not absolutely necessary for the production and the presentation of the project, then you would put it here under marketing and communications, because you're videotaping it in order to communicate later or document or market yourself. So this is a marketing expense. And I hope does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, great. But if the videographer is necessary because it's like projecting somewhere in the space, then they would go under production. Okay, indirect costs. These are overhead expenses that some artistic entities may be incurring. They include absolutely necessary expenses for an artistic entity to do anything, to do any projects. So if you're not keeping the lights on, then you're not producing anything in a sense. But if you don't have a facility where you're keeping the lights on, then that doesn't apply to you. If you don't have staff, you don't have to worry about it. But if you do have a bookkeeper, or you use your cell phone for coordinating this project, What you would do is you would take a percentage of how much you use your phone for the project and take that percentage of the bill and add it here. But we will only fund up to 10% of your requested amounts in this section. This does not have to be super detailed. This is actually intended to be the hard to nail down things, what we call soft costs that don't really go on a line anywhere else, or just like hard to say. 5 sheets of paper to like print out an insurance form. It's like, well, I have a printer and I have paper and I need this insurance form to be printed. So it's an expense of the project, but it's an indirect cost. The balance, the project budgets should be balanced. So you should show exactly the same amount is coming in as is going out. And things may change. We understand that support may vary. What you end up spending may vary. That's why the final reports are so important. And, you know, being flexible and also identifying when you're not going to get a funding source and finding a new one. Those kinds of things. So we want to see that that you're paying your artists. We are it's part of our mission is to support artists directly. And so you don't have to skimp there. We in fact like to see large artist fees and low other costs. And what's the other thing? This is one of the hardest parts, I would say, but it's also an opportunity to show the narrative of your project in numbers. Your budget can tell a story. It can show that you have a ton of support from donors and you're planning a bunch of activities. It could show that you have a history of being funded by others. It could show that that you have some in-kind donations from corporations, where you're kind of doing your due diligence of seeing where support is kind of hiding, and putting it towards your project. So there's a lot of things that are really great about a budget. And if you have questions, again, please reach out. This could be, you know, as complicated or as simple. This really is bare bones. The details and the notes are just going to give us more information. The more we know, the easier it is to approve funding. We have one more section and then I'm going to take questions. Sorry. Yes, I said that right. Okay. So we have work samples. So the work samples are where you're going to share relevant examples of how your project will look, sound, and feel. We understand that some projects are actually going to come together for this opportunity and may not have history. So in that case, we would suggest providing examples, other projects that highlight your work and kind of give us a better sense of what to expect. We also know that work samples can vary in quality. And so not everyone has access to a studio, but please do your best to provide high quality, the very best that you can, high quality samples. Please provide timestamps, 2 to 5 minutes, probably too much, 2 to 4 minutes per sample. If you just want to kind of imagine that if you don't put in timestamps, it's going to be very hard for someone to know where to look. And you just want to kind of pinpoint what you're interested in highlighting within a piece that is more than 2 minutes. And let's see, you can provide, I think it's 2 to 4 work samples per up to 5, right? Okay, so it's 2 are required for each entity. but up to 4. And wait, is that right? Up to 4, but 5 total. Something like that.
Yeah, well, I think you can do more. It's just,
What we're going to be looking for. So between 2 to 4 for the project is advised. We will take up to 5, but at least 2 per. That's right. At least 2 per entity. Did I get that right? At least 2 per entity, up to 4 for one entity, and no more than 5 for the entire project. There we go.
And are these examples of prior work or work that's projected to be a part of the project? Either proof of concept work?
Yeah, I think it's either. So if you have a score that hasn't been performed and you want to submit that, you can submit that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's work. I would say that's complete. Yeah. Okay. We prefer posted streaming work samples. So if you can upload to YouTube on a private link, please do that.
Like file 3 now?
I don't want to really, there's a lot to manage. So the more of that, the better, but it's really, we can absolutely accept uploaded media files. The other thing that so I guess we're on to the next, slide, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, you got through that. We didn't. All right.
Okay, great. Just another word about the jot form. Jot form is where you will actually submit your application. It's an online form that has several screens. At the very beginning of the jot form, it will have directions on how to save, how to produce a link that you could access saved progress. You have to do that portion of it. You don't have to sign up for jot form, but you do have to follow those directions if you're planning to leave and come back. I would assume that you should just do that anyway, just in case you get to a point of the application and maybe it looks or feels a little different and you need to navigate away. You don't want to lose all your work. If you have questions about it, please let us know, but I think the directions are pretty clear. Take your responses that you've done in a word processor, either with a sample application or with the Common App and then the sample application. Paste into the jot form, provide links or upload your work samples as media files, upload your budget, and submit. And you can upload, I would suggest, upload your budget and then submit. Collaborations, once your project partner has filled out the eligibility form, you have a completed application.
Eligibility form is a separate jot form.
It is a separate jot form. It is available in a lot of different places, including the jot form, like the actual application. There's a link there. It's also on the website. And just to be clear, there is an overview of the MGP, which tells you just kind of more about us, and so that you know if there is alignment, if there's mission alignment between your project and what we do and what we're looking to fund. And then there is basically a web page for applicants to navigate and have information, and that's specifically about the 2024 MGP. So there are 2 pages. One of them is chock full of details and tech details. The other one is a general overview about the project and the program from maybe an outsider point of view. Okay, questions are maybe online first, if possible.
Okay, we don't have too many online questions at the moment. If there's anybody on the Zoom call that has questions, please feel free to enter them in the chat or you can always email it to us at mgp@intermusicsf.org. Our first question is for the work samples. Is there a like a file size limit?
That's you.
So for our uploads, we ask that you, if there's any big files, like a big video, we ask that you upload it to YouTube or to like your Google Drive and just send us a link to it. But if it's just an audio file, it should be fine. There's no real limit size for it. It's just anything bigger, I'll probably email you back and kind of ask you for a link versus just sending like that full video, which will take you a while to upload. Our next question is, how does the eligibility restrictions regarding operating costs work in reference to a recording project?
General operating costs?
Eligibility restrictions. Yeah.
Eligibility restrictions for operating. We don't fund general operating. So that's one of the ineligible. This is not a general operating grant. This is a project grant. So direct project costs and expenses to produce and complete the one project as outlined with 10% indirects. And those would be kind of a softer, that's a little bit of a gray area, but it's certainly not general operating.
Our next question is, will there be the same amount of grants awarded to single entities and collaboration applicants?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, the $4,000 grants are only available for, like grants at the top amount are only available for collaborations. I don't know. I don't know that question. I'd have to look. I'm not sure if there's a priority for collaborations and more people who are involved, or if
I hope not.
I don't think so.
Or it shouldn't be, technically. If you're offering this as a general fund, and you're asking people to apply in different categories, it should be.
Yeah, it's just
general.
Yeah. There's only the amount, so just the top award.
Okay, and then like the last question of the set would be if
And I may say I don't know, and I'm sorry, but I will come back with answers, I promise.
so the question is, would my partnering with a nonprofit make the possibility of getting a grant any higher?
No. Yeah. This is one of the only grants that's actually open to emerging artists that don't already have 501c3 status. If you're partnering, it really depends on the relationship of that entity. The nonprofit has to have an annual operating budget of under $150,000 per year. So that's just kind of another thing to consider. Like any project partner has to fulfill all of the eligibility requirements. And that's one of them. That's kind of usually blocks large organizations like schools and, even beyond the fact that a lot of the programming is in public. So I'm going to take some questions from the room. Yay.
Just a clarification.
Yes, right.
So if Caesar is the composer and the leader of the ensemble, does somebody from the ensemble have to actually be the representative?
No.
So
yes.
then it's still a collaboration.
It is.
And that means that, however, there's nobody else but Caesar has to be eligible to write and propose the grant. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So the main contact is the same, but the entity, like his band, would have to be located in the Bay Area and fulfill all of the other project requirements. The ensemble would have to have an operating budget of less than $150,000 per year. The whole thing.
So obviously the project partner eligibility form would not be required if you
That was my question, because there's nobody from the band, because he's representing himself as the composer and the band.
Well, there is eligibility about the applicant.
Yes.
As the entity. So we would urge that there is an eligibility for, I think there are a couple of other questions there too. It's not that long. It's a very short questionnaire, but it's nice to have complete records.
So he would have to fill out both of them.
Yes,
Okay,
because it's an entity.
That's what I was curious.
Yeah. So he would be the main contact for both. But yeah, have to fill both. Yes.
My project in mind is actually putting together a quartet to perform music I've written.
Mhm.
So would that be the same thing as Rents?
No, that would be another, unless you're playing in the quartet.
I'm playing in the quartet.
If you're playing in the quartet, then it would be the same situation as I just
Okay.
described.
Okay.
Yep. Any other questions? Yes.
As an event organizer, if I have an event and so do my musicians that I hire, are they the collaborator?
That's an interesting question. We're actually not requiring a collaboration application for concert presenters. We're going to look at history and the proposed project. So what kinds of music are they? Small ensembles? Have you presented small ensembles in the past? But you don't have to have a project partner as a presenter. And that's why the small ensemble, the presenter, and the arts organization are the three entities that can apply a single applicant.
So in my situation as an event organization, so all the events that I organize, I am the only single entity. That was my question.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's a single applicant.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you would describe your activities historically and the project proposal as the presenter.
And the artists, they are not the collaborator. In this case, just me, a single person. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
If there was an orchestra that was under 25 people, and then you wanted to also bring in a chorus, that would make it over 25, but the chorus is paid by another entity or something.
That's an interesting question. I believe I need to know more about both the whole situation and see, just look historically on other projects that involve that many people. Because this is really for small ensemble music. And so it would have to be mission aligned in some way. So I guess that would be a conversation and to know more before you apply.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to just not waste anybody's time. Any other questions?
Yes. There is. Do you require scores for work samples? Yes.
Oh, I believe there's an FAQ about work samples. We don't require them, but they're encouraged for composers.
Yeah, be sure if you have timestamps to point to the correct measures and everything that
Okay.
on the score.
I think everything else we can answer online. And for everybody that is attending this workshop, we will be emailing out an email with a link of the recording of this workshop, as well as the slides that were in this workshop, and all of the questions that were asked on Zoom. We'll be answering them and sending those out to everyone as well, so everybody has them.
Okay. I'm excited. I hope everybody doesn't, is this so bad? This isn't so bad, right? I think once you start diving into the narratives, you're gonna be like, I could talk about my work all day. And that's, that's good. Cutting it down is gonna be the hard part. chewing down those words.
So
Yes.
I have one last short question.
Yes, go ahead.
So the grant, so the is granted for the period for June 1st,
Mhm.
right? To the end of this year.
End of next year,
Okay,
18 months.
so I have a project June 2nd. Should
That is within the window.
Okay,
Because that's just to clarify, that's because that is the active window of the grants, but you will know that you got the grant for that date, right?
Yeah.
For the June.
It shouldn't, I mean, nobody's project should be absolutely depending on
Yeah,
right.
this grant
Yeah.
to happen. Like, we want to fund something that we know is going to happen regardless, because it has a higher success rate of actually being completed. Which is why no funder really wants to come to the table without other backers.
I see.
So if you are, yeah, that is absolutely applicable. I will tell you, InterMusic SF is going to try and get you the funds exactly by June 1st. You know, that's what we're hoping for. We're getting, this application closes on April 14th. Then we'll prepare the application materials. The panelists must review, I think, like, you know, around 80 or 90 applications. And then we have to have a review process. And once that happens, which is almost guaranteed to be in the month of May, we can cut checks. So just to give you kind of like, you're looking at the team here. So that's what we're gonna do. And it's, so yes, that's fine.
that's nice.
Yeah.
It will happen anyway, but it will be, if it's granted, it will be Christmas for me in June.
I mean, it's nice to have a definite date for transparency so that everyone knows what the available opportunity is. And if it's within that date, it is open, this activity. I did want to just mention that if you have a project, I know that there are some folks who had projects that are larger, that are being funded from many different angles and like have many stages. They're looking for funding for this organization to be a part of one stage of that. Like, let's say there's a commission and a recording and a videotaping and a tour. If your activity started, but this is particularly for one of those projects within the larger project, that activity could have already started. It's the grant funded expenses and activities for this proposal need to be within that window. So I hope that's like more clear than less.
It does.
Okay. Great. Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.